Ladies and gentlemen, it's November 19th. Happy International Men's Day to all my fellow kings. And last but certainly not least, happy World Toilet Day. Finally, fellas, it's our time. Go forth and prosper on this fine Friday morning. Thank you so much for watching The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotzia. We got analysts galore here to help you build those NHL and NBA lineups, but we have an NFL panel standing by demanding that they go first, so we will reward them for their patience. DraftKings contributor Reed T. Fowler, Pierce Dietrich, RotoWire's Alan Sislowski. Dudes, let's get the 411 on your favorite bets on the DK Sportsbook this weekend, starting with your favorite spread on the board. Sweet T. Fowler, go ahead.
I'll be the first one to say that I don't think dudes need their own day. But
what are you talking about? What are you talking about? We never get days.
Dads, look, dads need their own day. Absolutely.
Yep.
But just men in general, I don't think so. But like, I appreciate it. I appreciate the call.
Welcome.
Pierce is rolling his eyes. I'd love to hear his take. Maybe a different show. But like, my favorite bet is Green Bay. Green Bay now -1. Like, Minnesota's getting some of their defenders back, gets Harrison Smith back in the secondary, and like, they look good, Minnesota. But when they play good teams, they usually play up. But this is Green Bay now. Green Bay's defense looks really, really good. They faced Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson over the past 3 weeks. Their combined stats, and this is from Field Yates from ESPN, 62 of 110, so it's 56.3% completion, only 1 total touchdown and 4 interceptions. So this defense, we always talk about Devontae Adams. We love A.J. Dillon in this spot because of what he can do, especially dynasty players in fantasy football. But Green Bay over their last 4 games against Minnesota are 3-1. Rodgers' TD prop is at 2.5. We'll get to that in a little bit. And the Packers are, I understand they're going to Minnesota, but this has moved down now. This opened earlier in the week at Minnesota or Green Bay -3.5. And a ton of people are going on Minnesota side. I don't get it. I get that he was bad coming off of last week, Aaron Rodgers, but you're telling me after that game, he's not going to come out here against a division foe and completely open the floodgates? Yeah, give me Green Bay -1.
Yeah, for sure. Vikings 1-7 ATS2 in their last 8 home games, Reed. So that kind of sets up Green Bay nicely to continue this strong pace. The best team, ATS in the league. Alan, what about you, dude?
I can't believe Reed is man-shaming. It's very offensive.
Seriously, Reed, what's going on with you, dude? Don't attack me.
Very, very. But that said,
like, I think that's specific. Why do you think it's about you, Emerson? About me too.
Yeah, that's true. You are a man of international flavor, that's for sure.
That said, the Browns are laying 11 at home to Detroit. The Browns are coming off that humiliating loss while the Lions are on the road for the 2nd straight week after that tough overtime tie. We all love ties against the Steelers. The Browns should roll here with or without Nick Chubb, with or without Baker Mayfield. The backup running back, Dearness Johnson, would be a starting caliber running back on at least 20 NFL teams. And I actually prefer Case Keenum to a banged up Baker if that's how it goes. The Browns have been rolling. If the Browns had been rolling, this might be an upset danger look ahead game, but with the way that their season is in peril right now, I'm laying the points.
Okay, yeah, we got Browns now, 12-point favorite at home against the Lions. Yeah, Pierce, what's your favorite spread here on the board?
Well, before we get to that, I definitely disagree with Reed. Not only do men deserve a day, we deserve a day every single week.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Every Friday, Dude's Day, every Friday. And if Reed doesn't want to celebrate, that's fine. He doesn't have to. I wouldn't make Reed celebrate Dude's Day every Friday, but I'm celebrating Dude's Day.
Amen.
I thought Saturday was for the boys.
Amen.
Yeah, well, that's for the boys. We're talking about men.
Oh, God.
Okay, there's a difference.
Let's go, guys. Come on, guys. Let's go together. Let's stay toxic. Come on.
But I will agree with Reed. I like this Green Bay line. Green Bay's defense is for real. I know that they have the 24th rush DVOA, but there's a reason. It's because they leave their safeties back. They don't put a lot of guys in the box because they prevent big plays, and this defense is working out. So Dalvin Cook can have a really good day in DFS, and more power to him. But Green Bay wins games, and they win games with this defensive scheme. They've really impressed so far. I know Aaron Rodgers didn't look good last week, but he didn't get to practice last week. He'll be fine. Relax. Everything's going to be okay with Green Bay. I can't believe this line. If it's a trap, it's a trap. I don't care. I like Green Bay.
It's a trap. I see what you did there with the relaxing, right? That was his thing. RELAX a few years ago, right? Was that him?
Yes. Yeah,
Anywho.
that's it.
All right, great. Awesome. Alan, which total interests you the most here on Sunday?
Under 56.5, Dallas versus Kansas City. And I know that these are theoretically the best two offenses that are going to get tagged with the shootout of the week or the must stack and bring back on DraftKings. But Dallas's defense is actually good. And the Chiefs figured out against the Raiders last week that when a team takes that deep ball away with Tyreek Hill with bracket coverage, it's okay to punish them by running the ball and throwing some stuff underneath. I don't think this is a traditional punt fest, obviously, but more of a time of possession, chew the clock play for the under.
Okay, Reed T. Fowler, hook me up with the total that you have the most interest in.
Yeah, I think it's the Cincinnati-Vegas game at 50.5.
Ooh.
I think it's overreaction to what Vegas didn't do right against Kansas City, what Alan just talked about. And that cover 3 for Gus Bradley doesn't really work out when you have some really good skill players on the outside. And that's what Cincinnati has, right? When Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, and mostly the first two guys. You have a good running back in Mixon and Joe Mixon. And like, I don't think Cincinnati's front four, especially their front seven, can put pressure on Derek Carr. That's what you need to do to get him off his base, get the Raiders off their game plan. They don't have the same interior like a Chris Jones and like the other types of teams that have put pressure on the Raiders and Derek Carr to mitigate this. This defense for the Raiders has regressed, has gone back. Even though they put the most pressure on the opposing quarterbacks with their front four, I still think that this game is going to be shootout. I don't trust Cincinnati secondary either. I think they have some really good tacklers in Jesse Bates and Von Bell, but I don't like necessarily their guys and like Eli Apple. Eli Apple is the worst cornerback in coverage, and he's going to be up against either a Zay Jones or Deshaun Jackson, so I expect big plays.
All right. Your Raiders have struggled to put up points over the last two games, Fowler. And it is an emotional roller coaster following Reed on Twitter as he live tweets these Vegas games, too. Pierce, which total catches your eye the most?
Chargers, Steelers. I'm going to go with the under here. I know the DFS community is fascinated, and just regular fans are fascinated with the Chargers. They've got some exciting players. But at this point, you've got to realize that they're not that good. This is not a good team. They're okay, but they're not nearly living up to expectations. They've gone over just 3 times this season. 2 of those they barely went over, so this could easily be a team that's gone over just once. And they're facing a Pittsburgh team that had plenty of questions coming into the season on offense. Now they're dealing with a lot of injuries. They've got a backup quarterback. And it's already a team that kind of will already play slow and methodically to begin with. I don't see a lot of points coming from the Pittsburgh side. I know the Chargers every once in a while will show up and put points on the board, but Pittsburgh's defense is decent and can prevent the Chargers from putting up a lot of points. So I'll take the under in this.
Okay, Mr. Dietrich, in the year of the underdog, which one are you backing here in Week 11?
It's the Cowboys, and I can't believe that they're underdogs. Again, and Steve mentioned this the other day on the show, that this is the season of overreactions. And Reed was talking about this before the show. If this is just a regular game, or if this is a regular week, we're going to overreact to it being a regular week. And if it's crazy, we'll overreact again. Look at the Cowboys. People are still overreacting to that Denver loss. And it was basically just 4 plays didn't go their way. If 4 plays go their way, they win that game pretty handily. But yet the narrative is, oh, man, they should have lost 30-0. Yeah, that's true. They were getting blown out, but they were getting blown out because they just missed on a couple plays. And if you look at what they did last week, my narrative seems to be a little bit more accurate, that they lost to Denver because of about 4 or 5 plays, because they looked really good last week. And they're facing a Kansas City team that's only looked good in 1 week. So I don't know what their overreaction is going to be, but if I had to pick, I would clearly take the Cowboys in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think most people watching probably know the Cowboys, too, have been one of the better teams to bet on this season as well, Pierce. 8-1 ATS, and we know how bad the Chiefs are in that department, 3-7. Alan, how about you, man? Underdog you like?
Seahawks at home are getting 2.5 against Arizona. I'm not sure why the Seahawks are underdogs at home with Kyler Murray iffy. And even if Russ is compromised, it's still Russell Wilson. I put my money where my mouth is on this one. And the other one was the Bears opened up as 5.5 point underdogs against Baltimore. I know that was bet down to 4 on DraftKings. The Ravens defense is pretty bad this year. And Justin Fields seems to have turned the corner in the last couple of games. I loved it at 5.5, but I still like it a lot at more than a field goal.
What's the latest with Kyler Murray, too? Are they going to opt to rest him one more day? I haven't seen any news on that. I don't know if you guys
I mean, with
have.
the bye coming up
Right.
or the week after, it seems like that would be the most plausible way to do it.
Okay, cool. Good stuff. Love it. Reed, hook me up, dude.
Yeah, and Colt McCoy, I think he has a pec injury as well, right? Didn't know that Colt McCoy had pec muscles to begin with. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, Colt. But I'm going Washington at +3. What's this love for Cam Newton all of a sudden? Right? I do not get it. And maybe Pierce can go back to his when he was living in the Carolinas, and he can fill me in on we're anointing Cam Newton a top 10 quarterback this week. If you want to talk fantasy, we're anointing him the guy who's going to be better than Sam Darnold. I get it. Anybody is going to be better than Sam Darnold has been for the Carolina Panthers. But let's not forget that this guy had 8 touchdowns and 10 interceptions last year for the Patriots. A lot worse weapons when you talk about his skill players. I get it. But the offensive line is still a problem. It was a problem for Sam Darnold, and it's still a problem. Even without Chase Young on that Washington front, you talk about a coach now that knows all of what Cam Newton's shortcomings are, and were tried to hide them when he was in Carolina. I don't get it. Maybe Christian McCaffrey can do the Andy Reid punt, pass, and kick, whatever it is. But like, I just don't get it. His ADOT last year for Cam Newton was 7.6. And again, I go back to this offensive line is still bad for Carolina. This is his second week, his first full week as a starter, getting the reps of the ones. Washington just beat the Bucs off of a bye by 10 points. Tom Brady. So I just Washington +3. I get it. They've been bad, but I think Carolina, even though that secondary is nice and they apply pressure on the quarterback, I got to give the quarterback grade to Heineke over Cam Newton this one, and the coaching as well.
Nobody is more obsessed with Cam Newton and believes more in Cam Newton than Jeff Ulrich, too. Like we talked about it the other day, Wednesday, on a Wednesday edition of the slate. What's up with that?
What Pierce was saying, too, like we're overreacting. And I've seen now that Cam Newton, all of these teams, 31 teams, are completely, or however many teams need a quarterback, are so sad they don't have Cam Newton. That's not the case. They've done their due diligence on Cam Newton. Cam Newton was a last resort for Carolina. And look, he's better than Sam Darnold, but doesn't take much to be better than Sam Darnold this year.
Yeah, and Ulrich will join us coming up later in the show. We will talk about the Panthers with him and a little friendly wager that we have made. We'll bring that to the forefront of everyone's minds watching. Alan, hook me up with a player prop that interests you the most.
As a long-suffering Jet fan, and I'm sorry that's a redundant term, suffering and Jet fan, I've learned to use the sports book to hedge my happiness. I pushed the button this week on under 225 passing yards from Joe Flacco against that aggressive Miami defense. If I'm wrong and Joe Flacco goes for 250 and 3, I'll be happy to give my money to the book. Take the under on 225 passing yards. The juice is -115 on DraftKings.
Yeah, speaking of another miserable Jets fan, Kenny Ducey will be joining us coming up in the show to talk some NBA. Reed, player prop that you like for Sunday.
Is that like miserable, he's miserable, or like he's miserable watching the Jets?
Yeah,
that's a rhetorical.
It's all the above.
That's a rhetorical. And tell Jeff, too, that Louis Oosthuizen withdrew from the tournament with lower back injury. Surprise, surprise. After I tout him, surprise, surprise, he withdraws.
Don't do it.
No. Aaron Rodgers over 2.5 passing touchdowns, I think I like. But the one I like a lot more is Deebo Samuel over 5.5 receptions against your Jacksonville Jaguars. Not great. And, I don't think Deebo's going to be handling the bulk of the carries in the backfield if Eli Mitchell is fine and we have Jeff Wilson out there. He's hit this number 2 of the last 4, and the 2 that he didn't hit, he got 5 receptions in those 2 games. So I like Deebo to go over 5.5 receptions.
All right, Pierce, hook me up.
Let's talk some more about some bad quarterbacks. Justin Fields, over 215.5 yards passing. We talked about him in the Monday night matchup. The over-under was 181. He went well past that with 291. Since Bill Lazor's taken over the play calling, they've lost 4 of 6, but Fields is starting to look better. And this is an interesting matchup for him. He's a deep pass quarterback. He's facing a team that's allowed ranks 30th in allowing plus 20-yard passes in Baltimore. You look at some of these stats for Baltimore. We've said it before, this defense is not very good, especially when it comes to defending the pass. And you look at depth of target, they're in the bottom third. They rank 32nd in yards after catch. They're 26th in missed tackles. All those things add up to the possibility of Justin Fields getting a lot of passing yards against this Baltimore defense.
Wait, Emerson, really quick, because I'm on the Baltimore side, and we were talking about this earlier, and I think this is pertinent for this. Like I'm on the Baltimore side a lot more, like pretty good. That was my second best bet. We're talking about 10 days for Baltimore to prepare after a really, really bad loss to Miami. And Justin Fields is the worst in QB passer grade against pressure. And right, we see Baltimore give the second most pressure to Buffalo, right, in the NFL. I'm just a little bit worried, but I think this goes to more of what we were talking about earlier. Like, I am so much on the Baltimore side, and both of these guys, in Pierce and Allen, are so much on the Chicago side. I have no idea.
You know, just speaking for spread too, like Baltimore 1-6 in its last 7 as a favorite, and
that number's coming down too. I liked it at 6.5 or whatever it was that Allen was talking about for Baltimore. Now it's come down to 4.5. Like, it's wild to see how these things move drastically in our perception and recency bias.
Yeah, for sure. And Ravens 0-4 ATS against teams with a losing record too. Like, we saw that in that Thursday night game against Miami. Allen, adios, dude. Good having you back with us here on this Friday. But Reed and Pierce, need you to hang tight. We're going to chase or fade some of the DFS storylines coming up. But first, it's an NBA Building Blocks edition of NBA Building Blocks right after this quick break. All right, good morning and welcome back, everybody. We have, close to a dozen NBA games tonight to discuss, so let's go ahead and do just that. Here's our panel. DraftKings contributors Kenny Ducey and Matt Meiselman. NBA building blocks, who are your building blocks? Who are you going to be building your lineups around tonight in the NBA? So start me off with the big beefy dudes at center, Kenny.
Well, I really like DeAndre Ayton in this spot, Emerson. He's gone for 6x in back-to-back games. He has 5 straight double-doubles, and he should be locked in to another double-double here. 32-plus minutes should be on the horizon. When you look at the Dallas Mavericks, they're 20th in rebounding rate. They're the 7th worst team in defending inside of 5 feet, allowing 64% of shots to fall. He saw 35 minutes and had a monster game against Dallas the last time that Phoenix played a basketball game. So I do think that DeAndre Ayton here should be an absolute monster. He's only $6,700 in a very cushy matchup against the Mavericks team he just dominated. Give me 8.
All right, Matty, what direction you going in at center?
So I think Kenny's exactly right about DeAndre Ayton. He missed a handful of games and then came back the last 2 and was kind of supposed to be on a minutes restriction, but that didn't really happen. He played 36 minutes last time out against the Mavericks. This is the same matchup against the Mavericks. He did really well in that one. I'll pick someone different, though, because I think that this is a slate where we're going to get a lot of injury news, and it'll be easier to pay up for guys. So NIKOLA JOKIC, it's a back-to-back. He didn't play well last night. Denver lost at home to this Philly team that is missing still almost all of a lot of their best players. They have Tobias Harris back now. But without Embiid, that should have been a good matchup for Jokic, and he did not do as well as he should. I think it's going to be easier to afford that $12K later in the day than it seems like now. So for now, I'll pick Ayton, but I think that Jokic will seem more appealing later on.
Yeah, he's logged at least 50 points, I believe, in all but one game in November. I mean, he's had a pretty damn good month. How about Meiselman? How about a building block at forward?
Yeah, I think that forward, at least as of now, is a tough position to find value. So we'll get there. I think guard is where we're going to be able to save salary. I think at forward, there are some pretty good pay-up options. I think Paul George may make the most sense. Kevin Durant looks good. Giannis looks good. But George is in a good spot against the Pelicans, and the Clippers are a little bit shorthanded. I'm a little concerned about this being a back-to-back, but Nick Batum is out. I think he probably misses tonight's game also. Terrence Mann's been dealing with an injury. And George has just been really good this season. So I don't think he's that necessarily that much better of a choice than Giannis or Durant. I like all of these guys. George is kind of the spot I'm leaning, but I do think in general paying up for a top-tier forward is going to make sense from a roster construction standpoint.
Okay, Kenny, do you agree there? You got to pay up here if you're going to be building around someone at forward?
Yeah, Matt just lobbed the ball up to me, and I'm going to dunk it. He didn't mention one pay-up option, which I think is a really, really good deal, and it's JAYSON Tatum, 10.1K. Yeah, we saw him struggle against the Cavaliers, right? And everyone wanted to say, JAYSON Tatum, he's bad now, right? He's actually just a bad basketball player. That's not the case. He had to face Evan Mobley in that game, and with the exception of that game, he's been absolutely fantastic. He's gotten you 5X pretty much every time he's hit the floor in the last 6 games, 46 or more fantasy points in 5 of the last 6. This is a pace-up game here. The Hornets are the Lakers are second in pace and 14th in defensive efficiency, so that always makes them a good play. And now JAYSON Tatum gets to face Taylor Horton-Tucker and Carmelo Anthony. Look, this is a guy that's had his struggles over the last 2 years. Maybe he hit a little bit of a wall. Maybe he's not going to be the best player in the league like some people thought he might be one day. You know what, though? This is a very good matchup, a very good price to pay on JAYSON Tatum. I think he should definitely get you 50 fantasy points here. And you're very happy with that because I agree with Matt. I think that this is a very difficult position to save money at. I want to spend up. And I do love the Paul George call. I love the Clippers tonight. But I think that JAYSON Tatum is going to go a little overlooked. And I think, again, you just can't ignore the pace, right? The Lakers are always a great team to target. I think this is a pretty good scenario to play Tatum.
Yeah, a lot of folks around here in Boston have been pretty disappointed in JAYSON Tatum's start to the season. But everyone says, hey, tonight's showdown against the Lakers, another chance for him to reaffirm his superstar status. Matt, you mentioned earlier at guard is where you can save cash tonight.
Yeah, so I don't think Steph Curry is going to play tonight. And because of that, I think that a lot of Warriors value is going to open up. So he's not as cheap as some of the bench guys, but Jordan Poole is 6,100. And I think that in a situation where Curry doesn't play, he's someone who deserves to be $8,000 or $9,000. Like, he is the guy in their offense, maybe Andrew Wiggins to some extent, but Poole is going to take over a lot of what Curry does. Not as well as Steph does it, but that's a very, very low price for Jordan Poole. So assuming Curry doesn't play, I think Poole becomes the slate's best value, and then it opens up more minutes for guys like Damian Lee, Gary Payton. But I do think that Steph, who I think there was an announcement he was uncertain or something, it's a back-to-back spot against the Pistons. They don't need him to play a back-to-back at this stage of the season. I think that it makes sense for him to rest. So it opens up a lot for other Warriors.
Okay, what do you feel like doing here for a building block at guard, Kenny?
Yeah, I want to give the viewers at home just a second here to answer this trivia question. Can anyone tell me who has the second most touches of the basketball per game in the NBA? It's Malcolm Brogdon, and he only cost you $8,300 tonight. Malcolm Brogdon, second to just NIKOLA JOKIC, right? This guy is just a usage machine, and the usage rate 29% or greater in all but 2 of his last 8 games. The Pacers are getting a big pace-up game. They love to grind out these slow possessions, which makes it even more ridiculous that he and Jokic get so many touches of the ball, right? Because there aren't that many possessions to go around for those 2 teams. He should have no issues getting 5X on this slate. And when you look at the way that this matchup should go, the Hornets are 4th in pace. They don't have a good defense. They don't have a good interior defense. I think Malcolm Brogdon here should have no issues just getting to the hole, scoring the basketball. And we know that he's going to be getting the basketball in this offense. Everything is going to go through him. I think that this is a pretty good deal at $8,300. I agree with Matt, of course, because I always agree with Matt. He's a very smart guy, that there's a lot of ways to save money. But I think that Malcolm Brogdon has the potential to be a slate topper or a top 3 player on this slate, and he's only $8,300. So I'm definitely going to pay for him.
Somebody's phone ringing? What is that?
Yeah, that's my phone. It's actually Malcolm Brogdon, and he's calling to say thank you, Kenny, for, because no one talks about the fact that I'm second in touches.
And you even used
my
him.
Dad.
Oh, okay, cool. You even used him as as part of a trivia question for all of the fans at home.
Right.
Really engaging. That's what I really like about you. You always bring up our engagement. Kenny, let's switch over though real quick to the DK Sportsbook for tonight's NBA schedule here. 9 games on the slate. What is your favorite overall bet? It's gonna be a total, prop, that kind of jazz.
I'm going to take the Clippers minus 3.5. They are shorthanded, but they did get Terrence Mann back last night. Nick Batum was doubtful, so there's a chance that maybe he's upgraded here to questionable and maybe even plays this game. But look, I don't really care that the Clippers are shorthanded. I mean, they got it done against the Spurs with Brandon Boston Jr. and Amir Coffey. I know that they failed last night miserably against a bad Grizzlies defense, but the Pelicans are somehow even worse than the Grizzlies on defense, and especially inside. I think they have the second worst field goal percentage against them in the paint. And there is where I really like this matchup because the Clippers are so shorthanded, they can't play small ball. They've been throwing out Isaiah Hartenstein and Ivica Zubac, who've been playing really good inside. So I think that they're going to have a bigger lineup here just out of the fact that they need it, right, out of necessity. And I think they can exploit that weakness with the Pelicans inside. I think that they can score a lot. Paul George has been fantastic this season. I really like the Clippers here to bounce back in a big way in the second night of a back-to-back.
Maddie, bring us home. Favorite overall NBA bet on the DK Sportsbook tonight?
Okay, so if I'm right about Curry, I think that the Pistons and the under, like that has to be the play, but we don't know that he's out yet. So I'm gonna pick something else for now. I'm going with the homer pick with the Celtics. Like they should be larger favorites against the Lakers. And granted, we don't have all the news here. LeBron's a game time decision. Jaylen Brown's questionable. Robert Williams is questionable. So there's a way that this could break where Brown and Williams are out, LeBron's in, and I don't like this bet as much anymore. But the news could also break very favorably for the Celtics. And the Lakers without LeBron, if he somehow doesn't play, like this is a bad team. Like I don't even think they're an underachieving team that looks bad. I think if the Lakers had to play a whole season without LeBron James, they don't make the playoffs. So the Celtics are a solid team, even without Brown, even without Williams. And I think that they deserve to be much larger favorites than they are if LeBron's out. And even if he's in, I think that there's still a little bit of value on this line. So I know it's a homer pick. I feel like I always do this on here, but
you do.
I really like the Celtics.
I'm glad you pointed it out because otherwise I was going to do it. But thanks so much,
I'm
Maddie.
not from Boston. I'm from New Jersey. I'm just going with what you guys like.
Sure,
You're
thanks.
a New Jersey Nets fan.
Way to play to the home team, though, Maddie. Thank you. Kenny, love you. Mean it. Thank you as well, Mr. Meiselman. Coming up next, it's Jeff, it's Paul, it's AJ. They're going to be helping us build those sticky puck lineups. All right, there are hockey games to be played tonight around the National Hockey League, and we're going to help you build some lineups for the Hockey League tonight. DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, RotoWire's AJ Schultz, Paul Bruno. What's up, dudes? NHL opening face-off, choosing between the top options on tonight's short two-game slate. Wow, just 2 games. Let's start on the DFS side. So let's focus here on their showdowns. Who would you captain in the Jets-Canucks matchup, Paul?
Look, the Jets are on the second of back-to-backs, and that's normally a reason to fade a team, but the Canucks are a hot, steaming mess right now, Emerson, and that's just being polite. I'm expecting a low-scoring game, so I'll be using backup goalie Eric Comrie for the Jets as my captain. He's 3-1 with a goals against average of 2 even in 4 starts this season, so he's clearly giving the Jets a confidence to think that they can win without Hellebuck in goal. Confidence is just a rumor in Vancouver these days.
AJ, what do you want to do here, dude?
I totally agree with Paul, as much as that pains me to say that Comrie would definitely be the play here because of that Vancouver offense or lack thereof. If you want an out player, I would consider maybe Pierre-Luc Dubois. He won't break the bank compared to the likes of Kyle Connor or Mark Scheifele, but he's been just as productive as late.
All right, Jeffrey, who's your captain for this one?
So, I mean, look, it's a showdown. Everybody's going to be on the Jets here. We have 2 pretty solid favorites here. Nobody wants to take a piece of the Canucks. of the two games on the slate today, I do think the Canucks are the better chance if you want to go with like a low-owned pivot stack. So, I mean, you have the Jets coming in off a back-to-back. Obviously, they are starting the backup. Comrie's been good, but I do think this is a spot where a guy like JT Miller against a weaker, Winnipeg Jets special teams. And if if Vancouver does win this game, it's probably because their power play got off against one of the worst penalty kills in the league. I think that's the only area where Vancouver really has a chance now. And I think JT Miller is a guy who could definitely benefit. So again, we're talking long-term strategy here, or just like big field strategy. But I think captaining a Canuck like JT Miller definitely gives you a lot of leverage in the spot. Most people are going to be looking to the Jets here, rightfully so. They're big favorites, but again, that ownership and stuff in big fields, when you get lower ownership on a guy like Miller, and it turns out your way, it can be a big thing. So.
Well, AJ, the Avs also are visiting the Kraken in tonight's other game. So who is the captain you're going to target in this one?
Well, look, it's far from the contrarian play here, but I would look at NAZEM KADRI right now. He's just been so red hot. He's still going to cost you less than the top of the board at just 12.9. He's got 13 points in the last 7 games, and perhaps most importantly, during the 3-game stint without Nathan MacKinnon in the lineup, KADRI's been playing on the top power play unit, and he's scored 5 points with the man advantage in those 3 games. So that's, to avoid having to pay up at the top, I think he's the guy to go to. Like I said, it's not going to be a contrarian play by any stretch of the imagination, but he should do well in that spot.
Jeff, who's worth 1.5 times the salary?
Yeah, this is a game where I do think you need to stick with the Avalanche. I mean, their offensive players are coming in red hot. You've got a guy in Philip Grubauer who has just been abysmal this year. I think that you can even look to like the back end to captain here. Like I like CALE MAKAR at 13.5. I mean, is the player 2 points in his last game, is averaging about a point per game. But we've seen him with these ceiling type games against weaker defensive squads, which Seattle definitely is right now. So most people are going to be gravitating toward Rantanen and KADRI here, and that's fine too. But again, I think you stick with the Avalanche in this game for showdown, but using one of their back-end players, and we've seen their defensemen go absolutely nuts, and not just MAKAR, but Samuel Girard had a monster game a couple games ago, Devontae. So I think MAKAR is a really good sort of captain's pick. He's going to be different. He's going to be different in big fields, and he's got just as much upside as pretty much anyone on the Avs tonight.
All right, Paul, hook me up, dude. No MacKinnon, because he's going to be out for around like 3 weeks or so, anyone who's been out of the hockey cycle.
Emerson, it's a toss-up for me, not about the outcome, because I agree with the guys that the Avs are going to win this one going away. I see it as a high win probability for the visitors, so I'll lean easily toward their goalie on but we don't know which one it's going to be, Kemper or Johansson getting the start. So tune into RotoWire to find that out, unless AJ has some insider knowledge that he can give us now, because he runs that stuff. And then, however, the Avs offense has been on fire of late, so I will go with Skater for the captain, and I'll pick Captain Gabriel Landeskog. He's been on fire with 12 points and 29 shots on goal in his last 10 games.
AJ, any insider information you would like to share with our worldwide audience?
Unfortunately, as much as I do enjoy dropping the breaking news on here, nothing out of that one yet. It's just, it's too early. They're on the West Coast. They take their time with getting to practice and all that jazz. So we'll see you later today.
Okay, well then share with me best DFS value play tonight.
I'm going to look in the basement for this one. And I know, rightfully so, we should all be high on Colorado, but that doesn't mean you can't use a player from Seattle. And for me, it's Marcus Johansson at just 2,900 in the classic slate here. Since returning from injury, he's got 3 points in 4 games. Look, Colorado hasn't exactly been a fortress to play against lately. They're giving up 3.15 goals per game. So unless you're going to use whoever their netminder ends up being, I think Marcus Johansson is just so cheap for a guy that's been playing pretty well of late. You got to consider him.
Okay, Paul, you going to the basement for your best DFS value play?
Pretty close, but I'll give you a little insight, Emerson, into my recent success in DFS play. I've developed something called the sidekick theory, which looks for those players, depth guys, who get some run with dynamic duos on a team's top line. Normally, this is a short-term or injury replacement kind of a deal. And tonight, the sidekick is Logan O'Connor for the Avs, who's filling in admirably for their injured megastar McKinnon. O'Connor, for his part, has 4 points in his last 5 games played after opening the season in the bottom 6 role, where he only scored 2 points in 8 games. for this season. And that's a prototypical example of the sidekick theory. He's in line to continue his recent production level in this spot and is well worth the $4,100 price tag.
Jeff, who are you looking to for value?
Look, I don't have a theory or a fancy system like Paul, but I do like guys with great names, and NILS HOGLANDER definitely has one of those. So at 3,500, like I said, I think if you're looking for value tonight, I do think that going with Vancouver, like I would prefer going with the Canucks, who are taking on the Jets. Again, a backup goalie on the second end of a back-to-back and with a weak penalty kill. I would prefer going to the Vancouver Canucks around. Hoglander's 3,500. He's playing in the top 6 for the Canucks. Gets you some power play exposure as well. It's a player averaging 3 shots on goal, over 3 shots on goal for 3,500. He's been really hot of late too. 4 goals in his last 4 games. So I think all things considered, like he's just too cheap for the production he's been spitting out. And maybe the matchup isn't quite as bad as the odds suggest here for DFS. So I like Hoglander a lot for value.
Ulrich, let's go over to the DK Sportsbook here. Which team are you backing the most? So what's like your money line play tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I just look at this line with the Colorado Avalanche, minus 140 against the Kraken, who coming in off 5 losses. Their starting goalie, or their likely starting goalie with Grubauer, is like a .877 save percentage. You got Darcy Kemper likely going to start tonight. It's not confirmed, but he's been playing out of his mind lately. You've got KADRI and Mikko Rantanen, who's really looked pretty good at playing center. This team is rolling. The Avs, their back end is completely healthy. Like there's just nothing here that tells you that the Kraken really are gonna put up too much of an effort here. I'm sure they'll put an effort in, but I don't think they're gonna put a big scare. And the odds here just they're not big enough. I mean, minus 140 on the money line. You can definitely look to the puck line of plus 165. But I'm all about backing the Avalanche tonight. I definitely prefer them of the 2 big favorites on the slate.
Yeah, Paul, Kraken, the only one you can get plus money on tonight.
Not interested. The Canucks aren't scoring or defending as well, and that pretty much explains the depth of their current misery. Nothing's going right there. The opposite's true of the Jets, who are finally almost back to full strength, missing only Paul Stastny. I'm actually surprised that they're not more of a favorite than the minus 120 money line play, even though they're playing, as mentioned, on the second of back-to-back nights. I still think it's the bet to make.
AJ, who gets the AJ Scholl's money line stamp of approval?
You guys are killing me with this. I got to agree with Paul again. You know, Winnipeg minus 105 to win tonight. I just don't, minus 140 is not a terrible spot to be in, especially with how heavily, we expect Colorado to win. And I agree with Jeff. It could certainly be bigger. Minus 160 wouldn't surprise me if that had been the line here. But I just don't like giving up juice. It's just against my nature here. I'll definitely look at the Avs on the puck line. I think a goal and a half at plus 165 is tremendous value. But if we're sticking strictly to money line, I'll go the minus 105 on Winnipeg. Again, as Paul said, the back-to-back is an issue, but Vancouver, last 4 games, no points from Pettersson, Besser, or Horvat, which is why they're on a 5-game losing skid.
All right, well, Paul, of the 2 games, which one is more likely to go over? You got a total of 6 for Avs Kraken and then 5.5 for Jets Canucks.
Can I just say first that I'm winning AJ a lot of money? That's why he's agreeing with me now.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff, you got to come along for the ride. Seattle fans must be realizing that they're not in store for a magical first season like the Golden Knights enjoyed in Vegas in their inaugural campaign. The Kraken have been blitzed for 24 goals in their last 5 games, all losses. That's almost 5 a game. And Colorado scored almost 5 a game. So based on that combination, I expect the Avs' potent offense to reach the over-under line almost by themselves. And with a little bit of help from Seattle's puny attack, I think they'll hit the over here.
Jeff, which total are you leaning towards?
I mean, it's kind of got to be this Colorado one. The Avalanche coming in, outscoring opponents 17-5 over their last 3 games. They could get here on their own tonight. I mean, it really is that kind of spot. I think the only thing you worry about is Darcy Kemper is playing well, and does he just only let in 1 goal or maybe even pitch a shutout? But I just don't like the Jets Canucks. I think the Canucks probably show a little bit of bite and maybe stiffen up a tad defensively. But with the Jets coming in a back-to-backs, I would much rather go over in the Colorado-Seattle Kraken game as well. Paul laid out all the good points, but this Colorado team looks like they finally figured it out, and they're just facing a Seattle team who just doesn't have any confidence anywhere on defense and mainly in net. So.
AJ, don't sleep on the Jets Canucks total here, dude.
If we're talking overs, I'm definitely not touching that one. It's got to be Colorado here. You know, the Avs, as we have said ad nauseum here, are putting up a lot of goals. 17 in their last 3 games. Seattle, for their part, second worst in the league right now in goals allowed per game at 3.69. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Avs hit this total on their own. I kind of agree with Jeff. I think with the back-to-back, the Jets maybe not going to be quite as offensively set as they were. Maybe they get 1 or 2. Comrie pitches a shutout potentially. And, yeah, I would fade the under in that game.
Gentlemen, thanks for the help this morning. Paul, I enjoyed the picture you tweeted at me of your grand dogs. They look very, very tough. Good guard dogs as well. We do have one more break to go, everybody. The greatest DraftKings NFL analyst, Kirk Cousins rivalry is on the other side. All right, guys, we did the DK Sportsbook NFL thing to start the show. So if you missed that, our analyst shared with you some of their best bets. So feel free to rewind the show if you're there on watching Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter. Right now, we got the squad back. Jeff is actually sliding in for Allen. So a couple other DraftKings contributors here as well, Pierce Dietrich and Reed T. Fowler. How are Reed and Jeff here? You guys doing all right? Because there seems to be some kind of...
No, I'm not.
Okay, go ahead, Reed.
Who stays in? The one time, Jeff, the one time that I back him full force, what does he do? He does what he does best.
Did you see
It's
me
my
give my seal of approval? Did you miss the sweat earlier in the week where I said it's just looking a little bit too short in the odds? You might just want to lay off. If you'd watched,
you're right.
Reed.
You're right. It's my
You'd
fault.
watched.
My fault. I'm just going to bet
Emerson
on
watched?
Kirk Cousins then for the rest of the year.
Ooh.
Screw Louis.
And hey, Kirk Cousins is to Reed T. Fowler as Cam Newton is to Jeff Ulrich. As we have discovered, nothing is worse than when Victor Hovland withdrew because he had a little grain of sand in his eye. Completely screwed over many people here sitting on the desk. All right, it's NFL Chaser Fade time, everybody. It was a winning effort last week from the Colts over America's team, but they didn't really need Carson Wentz to do much in the game thanks to Jonathan Taylor. Wentz ended the game with just north of 7 DK fantasy points. They now have a much tougher matchup in Buffalo. So Chaser Fade for me here, Reed, that Wentz will have to be a lot of a more active here in the passing game versus the Bills and will score 20-plus fantasy points this week.
Wow. That's a lot there. I'm going to fade that he scores 20-plus fantasy points. I'm going to chase that he does need to play a little bit better and more than he did last week. But you take a look at the Buffalo Bills and how much points they've given up to opposing quarterbacks in terms of DK fantasy points, dead last, around 12 points. So even if he tries to do more, it might be a failing effort. I think you got to lean, even though Buffalo is strong against the run, their defense is strong. I think you got to lean on Jonathan Taylor. From a DFS standpoint, like we'll get to that in a little bit, what I think of him, but I'm not buying in Carson Wentz, especially at that price. If I'm going anywhere else around where he's priced, Tua Tagovailoa is probably the place that I want to go towards, as opposed to Carson Wentz. I don't trust it. And Justin Fields, as much as I love the guy, I don't really see it this week. So I'd probably be out on those guys, in on Tua, and then fading that Carson Wentz is going to get above 20 points.
Okay, Jeff, Wentz was on fire before that 7.1 point stinker in last week's win over the Jags.
Was he on fire? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I'm taking a look at his player card.
52% completion percentage against Tennessee 3 weeks ago. You nailed it off the start of this segment. The Colts didn't need Carson Wentz to do much. That's the Colts' whole MO. If they need Carson Wentz to do stuff, they're in big trouble, because even in good fantasy spots, this guy doesn't really produce much. I mean, he's got a season high of 26.58. That was in the wild game against Baltimore that also included overtime. I love our producers, but like Carson Wentz against Buffalo, Reed laid it out. This is a Buffalo team who's allowed multiple touchdowns only like twice in the whole year. They haven't allowed 3 touchdown passes once the entire season. And you've got Carson Wentz coming in. No, this is not a spot for fantasy. I don't care like how galaxy brain, how out there you get this week when you're making creative lineups. You know, if it's like 4 a.m. and you're like, oh, maybe Carson Wentz against even that scenario, I don't think you're going to put Carson Wentz in lineups. It's just not a good spot. Reed mentioned Tua. We should be talking about Cam Newton in the spot. That's the real spot.
Chill out, pal.
As you know, Emerson, because he's going to go off this week.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll get
4
to that.
a.m. Yeah, go to bed, man.
Yeah, for real. Pierce, what do you think? Chase surveyed that he'll go north of 20 DK fantasy points, which he did in the 3 previous games before this past weekend.
First of all, I got to fade Jeff Ulrich throwing the producers under the bus.
Yeah, that's terrible. Glennon,
wow.
Tom Glennon in my ear right now, and he's a pretty even kill dude. He is raging in the back.
I will chase that he needs to be active or can be active, but I don't think he'll be effective, not against this Buffalo defense. It's too strong. I don't see him putting up any points. And I also don't believe that Indianapolis is really going to want to lean on Carson Wentz that much in this game. If he has to be active and pass a lot, then they've lost. The only way they win, as these guys have already mentioned, is if Jonathan Taylor has a pretty good game and their defense somehow is able to control Buffalo's offense. That's a big, tough ask right there. I don't see it happening. Carson Wentz has had a pretty good season. We got to give him some credit. He's performed better than what we expected, especially coming out of the preseason with the injuries. But this is not the week.
Jeff, I will give you credit for bringing out some emotion in the typically emotionless producer Tom. But it did take just 2 weeks for Christian McCaffrey to warm up after missing 5 weeks with an injury, as he scored north of 26 DK fantasy points last week in a win over Arizona. He is the highest priced player on the slate in week 11, $8,900 in a matchup against a Washington defense without Chase Young now. He's out with that torn ACL. So chase or fade that CMC has his best fantasy outing of the season, which his highest up to this point has been just under 28 fantasy points. That's this Sunday. Jeff.
I mean, I'll fade it. I mean, I do think it's a good spot. And like I said, I do expect Carolina to potentially roll here against Washington, who's probably going to be getting like a little bit overvalued coming off their biggest win of the season. But that was essentially their Super Bowl. I mean, this is still a team without their best defensive player. I fade that McCaffrey's going to have like his best game of the year, just on the fact that now we've got Cam Newton there, who we know what Cam Newton does. He steals red zone touches from running backs. You know, McCaffrey had 10 targets last week. Is he going to get 10 targets with Cam Newton at quarterback? I think that's far less likely scenario, just because Cam, instead of dumping it off, will just take off himself as well. You've got a game script where maybe McCaffrey gets a few more carries, but again, probably going to lose out on the red zone touches. So I think his touchdown probability goes down in this spot. His carries should be up, and it may be a good spot for some garbage time like rushing, but I just don't think it's necessarily as good a ceiling spot as maybe even like last week.
Yeah, Pierce, his carries have increased, just his touches overall the past 2 weeks, 18 in week 9 and then 23 last week.
Well, I'm going to fade this. I mean, volume's one thing, but what kind of volume is he going to get? And Jeff alluded to the fact that Cam Newton will likely poach some of those touchdowns. There's a chance here for CMC to get 1 touchdown maybe, but 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, that's asking too much. And yeah, the volume has increased, but the problem coming into this season, the problem that's plagued the Panthers for the last several seasons, it's offensive line play. Their offensive line is not very good, and their offensive line is pretty much completely injured. So he might get volume, but it's behind a bad offensive line. One thing that Washington does pretty well is stopping the run, and if anyone is going to be able to stop Christian McCaffrey and Cam Newton, it might be their former coach in Ron Rivera. This is probably not where I'm going to go.
Hey, Reed, chase your fade for me. Christian McCaffrey has his best fantasy outing of the season this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 for 3. And voice of reason, thank you, Pierce, about Carolina, and talk about Washington getting a lot of positive publicity. I mean, Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers all of a sudden are a good team. And Pierce laid it out perfectly about this offensive line. You just I just don't trust it at all, right? It's not changed since Sam Darnold has left the building. respectively, right? Like, I don't get it. You like Christian McCaffrey from the standpoint that he's usually $10,000. So now he's 8,900. I think he's a better play than Jonathan Taylor, just because I think Cam is going to have to rely, and the Panthers are going to have to rely on CMC. What I do like for CMC though is his longest reception and maybe longest rush. His longest rush is over 15.5 at -105 on the DK Sportsbook. If the defense is going to have to worry about two backs, right, in Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey, you could get maybe a little bit more one-on-one type of situation. And his 16.5 longest reception at -115, those are things that I like a lot more than potentially leaning on Christian McCaffrey, even though he's got you 27 carries and like 14 catches. I think he has to get up to that 8-9 catch to get to the 26-28 landmark. I don't think that's happening this week.
And our friendly wager is you and I have the Washington football team and the points, and Jeff takes Carolina. Loser will send the winner dog toys for his dog.
The largest tennis ball known to man is coming to you and I.
Our group chat is getting a little out of hand right now. There's no doubt about it. Pierce, after a scorching start here to his NFL career, Bengals rookie wide receiver Jamar Chase has just 81 yards combined his last two games. Since he travels to Vegas for Week 11, take on a Raiders team that just gave up 516 total yards to the Chiefs. Oh my gosh, Reed. Chase or fade that Chase rebounds this week with a 20-plus fantasy point game versus the Raiders, Pierce.
Chase. I mentioned earlier this week, it's kind of intriguing to bet him as MVP this season. You get some pretty good payout. And now, I know, he's not a quarterback, and you can't give the MVP to a rookie. It's 2021. We've seen everything happen this season. We've seen all kinds of unpredictable moments. Why not take a long shot on Chase? We've seen his upside. He gets on a heater to close out the season. You never know. It could happen. And he should be fine. I know that he didn't play well in the last game against Cleveland. But that was more so Cleveland just had a good game. It happens. He's a rookie. He's not going to be on fire every single game. The Jets game, I'm just going to write that off. That was a strange game script. He'll be fine. 22nd pass DVOA. 20 points is not asking much from a guy that can get almost 20 points in one play. I will Chase.
Reed, you chasing Chase? Sorry, dude.
Yeah, and his matchup is against Faison, who's given up 17 receptions on 28 targets, 107 passer rating when targeted, over 13.6 yards per reception. Yeah, you look at this defense with the Raiders and their cover three, doesn't work against really fast and skillful receivers. So yeah, I'm gonna Chase.
All right, Ulrich, how about you, man?
Yeah, I think the Bengals, just as a team, are getting ready to just put one on the Raiders here. I mean, this is a Raiders team who, over the last 3 games, have averaged less than 2 sacks per game now. Their yards per attempt against is going out. It's just their defense just isn't playing as good. I mean, you can make the argument that maybe Casey Hayward in the back shuts down Chase, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I like Joe Mixon's upside a lot, and I like Jamar Chase for a bounce-back game here, too. I think stacking the Bengals in Week 11 could be very profitable.
Fowler, last question here, guys. Got less than 3 minutes to go in the show. After averaging about 10 targets a game in his 3 previous matchups, Lions tight end TJ Hawkinson had just 1 target last Sunday, and the Lions 16-16, thrilling tie with Pittsburgh. He actually ended up with more penalties, too, than targets in the game. So Detroit continues their search for their first win of the season this week in Cleveland. Browns giving up 2 touchdowns to Hunter Henry in their blowout loss to the Pats last week. So chase your fade for me here. Hawkinson once again becomes featured in the Lions offense and picks up at least 10 targets this week. Gosh, that's a lot.
10 targets? No. Who's the quarterback? Who's going to be the quarterback? I have no idea.
That's a great question.
So maybe he gets 10 targets, but I'm going to another tight end right around him because I don't want to spend time with TJ Hawkins, even though he's great. I think he's a solid player, but it's a world of hurt in Detroit. Give me Mike Gesicki. He's $500 cheaper. He gets the Jets. He ran routes on 81%, even though he also got a goose egg last week. He's got the route participation that's elite. So give me Gesicki over to Hawkinson. I just don't know who the quarterback is.
Okay. Ulrich, where are you going?
Yeah, I like the idea of paying up for Hawkinson or Gesicki. They're both low sentiment targets coming off, really bad weeks. I think Gesicki's the better target. I think Hawkinson could be in a spot. I mean, Jared Goff does not want to sit back there and throw it downfield. He could see 10-plus targets again. I think it's a bounce-back spot for Hawkinson, but I prefer Gesicki. And the nice thing about both those guys, if you pay up for them, they should be under 8% owned in GPPs, maybe even less. Still good upside for Hawkinson, just a very boomer bust player.
Yeah. Both on the road, both right next to each other too here. I'm looking at the tight end salaries, 5.7 for Hawkinson and 5.2 for Gesicki. Pierce, bring us home here, dude.
Made it. Dan Campbell took over the play calling last week, and DeAndre Swift got 33 carries. One thing I do want to mention, Google TJ Hawkinson's rookie picture versus his picture this season, and you'll see what Detroit does to people. Just look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it here. He had 11 targets in week 8, had 11 targets in
Motor
week
City,
6.
man.
Yeah.
I want to see Jared Goff. If Jared Goff is there for another year, I want to see what his baby face looks like after.
All right, guys, that is it. Sorry about your dude there on the PGA Tour this week, Reed. It is the last tournament of the calendar year, right before they go to your neck of the woods in Hawaii. All right, wait, we got to go. We have less than 10 seconds. I'm doing that thing again. Guys, everybody, thanks for watching. There's a 5 o'clock edition of The Slate. Jeff will be part of it.